Hey there, and welcome to the Sudo Show, brought to you by the Destination Linux Network. Today, we chat with Patrick McFadin. He's a technologist, member of the CNCF, and Vice President of Developer Relations at DataStax. We discuss the Cassandra Database, Release 4.0, and much more on the Sudo Show. Welcome to the Sudo Show, your home for all things enterprise open source. I'm Eric the IT guy, and joining me every episode is my supply chain-enabled co-host, Brandon Johnson. How you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing good, Eric. Supply chain enabled. I don't know. I don't know what to say there.
I order different components of you from different projects, and I put you together just in time for the show.
All right. But yeah, I'm doing great. Actually, hopefully, the audio coming from me is a lot better. I got a new mic, so I'm very excited about that. So, and put some more sound isolation in my office. So we're, cooking with gas here.
Yeah, minor improvements here and there. The show's really on a roll. I picked up a new mic a couple of episodes ago, and you can't hear it right now, but there's actually a thunderstorm brewing outside, and so we're hoping that it kind of stays out of our way long enough for us to have today's episode. Speaking of which, we've got Patrick McFadin, who is going to talk to us about all things Cassandra. So with that being said, let's dive on in. This show would not be possible without the support of our friends over at DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean offers the simplest, most developer-friendly cloud platform. You can get started on DigitalOcean for free with a $100 credit by going to do.co/DLN. DigitalOcean is investing heavily into their marketplace offerings for their app platform. The app platform is the easiest way to build, deploy, and scale your apps quickly with their fully managed solution. They handle the infrastructure, you worry about writing the code. Now, DigitalOcean offers up to 3 static sites for free. In a world where your online presence is as much a part of your identity as it's almost essential to have a website for yourself, your business, or your community. Now, you can do that at no charge on the DigitalOcean app platform. You can create your own website using a static site generator like Hugo or Jekyll, and even bring your own domain name for free. Need more sites or want support for additional languages like Node or Ruby? Not a problem. You can get the app platform basic plan for just $5 a month. Not entirely convinced? Then try their service for yourself by going to do.co/DLN. You can create an account and receive a $100 credit good for 2 months. And thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the Sudo Show.
Today's episode of the Sudo Show is brought to you by none other than Bitwarden. Bitwarden is the easiest and safest way for individuals, teams, and businesses to store, share, and sync sensitive data. You can go to bitwarden.com/DLN to check out their amazing service. You may or may not know that websites and apps are under attack every day, and because of this, security breaches occur. When you reuse the same passwords across multiple websites, hackers thank you because they can easily access your email, banks, and other important accounts. This is why security experts recommend that you use a different, randomly generated password for every online account. With Bitwarden, you can create these randomly generated passwords that are different for every site you visit. And the best part is Bitwarden will manage all of this for you so you don't have to. Bitwarden works across your devices from mobile, desktop, browser plugins, and even on the command line. When you make the smart move and go check out bitwarden.com/DLN and get started for free. If you're like me, though, you'll want to access all that Bitwarden has to offer with the premium edition, especially since the premium edition starts at only $10 per year. That's right, $10 per year. Go to bitwarden.com/DLN and thank you, Bitwarden, for sponsoring the Sudo Show and the entire Destination Linux Network.
Joining us today is Patrick McFadin. This guy does it all. He's a published author, an advisor to the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, VP of Developer Relations at DataStax. Just welcome to the show, Patrick. Did I leave anything out?
Foundation maker, apparently. Yeah, we were just talking about that, yeah. I've never seen a foundation I didn't want to create.
Yeah, so we were talking to them about that during the pre-show, and stay tuned. The Nerd Shirt Open Source Foundation is coming. Stay tuned to this show. We'll have Patrick on to talk more about that. I think it should be a thing.
Yeah, unfortunately, It's the time has come. Yeah. We're going to be getting back together again, I'm pretty sure. And we're all going to need new clothes because I have t-shirts that are like 3 years old now. We need to update our wardrobes.
Yeah.
I did a customer facing meeting the other day and I went and grabbed like one of the 3 or 4 button up shirts that still fit and are still in good condition. It's like, I should probably look decent, maybe shave. I don't know, shower maybe.
Yeah. Interacting with real humans. Ooh. I got a refresher on that one. Yeah. Right. Well, all my conference shirts, I'll say 2019 right now. So
right. I went through and updated some of my speaker content and realized that, oh yeah, everything I did that was good was 2018, 2019. What happened to 2020? Oh, right.
Oh yeah, that was it. Well, I have an archive of nerd shirts, and I have some good stuff. Like back at my Sundays, I have a lot of that stuff. So I mean, it goes back. Yeah.
It's history at this point.
Someday I'll have a museum and we'll have a grand opening, and I'll invite you guys. It'll be awesome.
Perfect. I love it. The Sudo Show will be the official podcast of the Nerd Shirt Museum. I love it.
There would be a standing room only. Hall of Fame. Oh yeah, we're already off script, aren't we?
Oh yeah.
We're looking at the script in the rearview mirror. So before we create any more foundations or start up any more not-for-profit museums, Patrick, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Oh boy, yeah, no, I think you hit the highlights there. No. Formerly, I'm a computer engineer. Yeah, I have a real degree in computer engineering, but I diverged away from that and got into t-shirts. But I've been working in infrastructure for, 20 plus years. And even before the .com, that was kind of fun. And just kind of my career grew up around scaling, before the internet, during the internet. What are we at now? Post-internet? And, everything from on-prem to cloud to VMs. And so, now I work at DataStax, which has been a fun ride, mostly because I got to know a little database called Cassandra back in 2011. And I felt like this was a database that I needed to put, some weight behind and do whatever I could, join into the club. But it's been a passion of mine for a long time. I think, it will be the database that my kids will use. That's the way I tell people. And then my kids are like, Dad, I don't want to use a database. I'm like, sorry. But, and finish your meal and use your database, do your homework, stay in school, kids.
Put your homework into the database.
Right.
That's right. But Dad, I want to use an SQL database. You're banished.
So just for the audience, you just happen to not be familiar, maybe you've been living under a rock. You don't know what Cassandra is, tell us what is Cassandra?
What is Cassandra? Besides yet another mythic creature or mythic person from Greek mythology, Cassandra is a database that was built, it was designed and conceived of in the beginning of the NoSQL explosion around the 2008 to 2011 time. This is when we were trying to figure out how to make databases scale. And Cassandra does that really, really well. It's a distributed database, shared nothing. And it works as a team. So it's pretty typical to see hundreds of nodes of Cassandra out there. It's built for scale problems. And over the past 10 years, it's become very, very popular first with the hyperscalers, but now it's pretty much everybody has a scale problem. So it's pretty cool to see how it's matured.
What would you say sets Cassandra apart from other databases? At least in its class. How's this? A database is in its class.
Yeah, it is a NoSQL database, first of all. So that's a non-relational database. And what sets it apart is in the way that it scales and does active. This is a really important part of it, is because of the way it distributes data, it's unique. It's the only database in the world that does it like it does. So it's very typical to see deployments that are active around the world. And so multi-data center, multi-cloud, all those things are easy to do. It's just default out of the box. One of the hardest things I like to say, I got paid a lot of money as an Oracle DBA to try to make that work. It never really worked. But that's really one of its primary superpowers, and just the ability to scale to petabytes, which is a hard problem as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So for those of us that were dumb systems administrators and never really dealt much with database schemas or anything beyond here's a table, here's a user, leave me alone. Other than having to support Oracle RAC, that was about the extent of my experience. So for those listening that are kind of in the same boat, how would you describe NoSQL? And is it the fact that Cassandra is a NoSQL database that kind of gives it that ability to scale the way that it does?
Yeah, so if you can, probably the easiest thing is to keep it simple. You have your relational and non-relational databases, and NoSQL fit into the non-relational. So relational databases, of course, have been around since the 1970s, believe it or not. And that just had to do with creating tables that are related in some way, like a primary key, foreign key. So this is when you do a select and a join. Anytime you type the word select, you're probably using a relational database, although Cassandra uses select too now. But NoSQL databases were built around this idea of using, departing from relational technology to solve different kinds of problems. So NoSQL databases is a huge, that could be graph databases, key value, wide column like Cassandra. But if you think about it from relational database where it's very general purpose, NoSQL is purposeful. It usually has a specification that's good at. Like document databases are good at storing JSON and doing searches off of it. Great. Things like Elasticsearch, everyone uses that for search. You wouldn't use that as just a general purpose database. So NoSQL is catch-all for all of that.
Would you say that Cassandra being a NoSQL database is kind of one of its superpowers, one of the reasons why it's able to scale as much as it does?
Well, no, it just is a NoSQL database, but it's in the architecture, the basic architecture of how Cassandra works. Like I said, a shared nothing. One of the harder problems in computer science and more expensive problems is coordination. So when we do heavily coordinated anything, right now, that's probably one of the most expensive things you can do in your data center. So if you think of like what's getting cheaper, CPU, disk, network, although not for egress. What's up? But when you think of those things are getting cheaper, it's easier to buy a lot of CPU and memory. But what's hard is coordination. And when you're in a heavily coordinated, like for instance, when you do a relational query, that has to be heavily coordinated because there's all these guarantees that come with it. Can be pretty expensive, either through time or money. And the architecture of Cassandra being shared nothing, it optimizes for availability and partition tolerance, which is completely uncoordinated. And it makes it sound like it's an awkward database. But it just takes a different way of thinking about the way you build applications and that sort of thing. So the underlying architecture is built to fail, which is really an interesting thing to think about because the original Dynamo paper that Cassandra came from was from Amazon. And no one knows how hardware fails better than Amazon.
You're talking about their delivery service or the data center?
Yes, all that. But it's assuming that anything that runs at scale, you're going to have a percentage of failure. I used to run data centers and we expect about 10% of our disks every year to fail. It's going to happen, right?
So tell us about Cassandra 4.0 just was released not too long ago. Tell us what's so special about 4.0 and like what's got you excited about it.
Yeah, again, for anybody who doesn't know about Cassandra, why is 4.0 important? Well, Cassandra is been around for about 10 years, and we've been talking about 4.0 for the past 6 years. And that seems like a long time. There's been other releases in the 3.x branch, but the 4.0 branch is a huge milestone for the project, mainly because it set a really important, like a stake in the sand. It says this is a level of quality release. So the reason the people in the project are really excited about it is because a few years ago, it was at a conference in 2019. I still got the t-shirt. We were all sitting around, everyone who's involved in the project that was there. We basically made a solemn vow that we would not release Cassandra 4.0 until we were all running it in production. And if you think about a .0, what does that mean? Well, that's the database that I'm not going to use until it goes to .1. And we wanted to buck that trend. So a lot of what had gone into Cassandra 4 is bug fixes around some of the testing that we do. because it's the most reliable database that people, or the database that should be the most reliable. Because if you're using a cell phone, you're using Cassandra, and a database of record should never lose data. So we tortured this database for 3 years with some of the most insane things. Oh, we had this tool called Fuzzy, and I mean, just all these bad things that could fall out. I mean, I love nerd projects. Besides nerd shirts, we should have a foundation for nerd project names. But the fuzz testing and Harry, and I mean, these are all projects, Harry and Fallout, that do nothing but do correctness testing. Like, they do terrible things to the database, and if one byte gets lost, then you have to figure it out.
Wow.
And we spent the last few years figuring out why. So when we released 4.0, we told the world, look, this is the most reliable and stable database you'll ever use.
The pile of dead SSDs from your Kubernetes cluster, I think, would be a testament to that.
There will be losses, and that's okay. It's like a few bits were given. Yeah, there was no smoke. It wasn't bad, but yeah, no, I was showing the guys there earlier. I have an M.2 SSD that burned out. I've never had that happen before.
Well, I'm waiting for my lab to go up in smoke. I have my CPU is always running at one of the boxes. CPU stays at a steady state of 90 degrees Celsius, which is not good for its longevity, but it has been at a steady state of 90 degrees Celsius for 5 years. So
yeah, you don't want, actually, you probably don't want to turn it off, because if it cools, it might crack. At this point.
Yeah, it'll run until you try and fix the cooling issue and cool it down. That's when it'll die.
Yeah. I would recommend water cooling for your next one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, Brandon, that doesn't mean taking a bucket and throwing a bucket of water onto your CPU.
I'm aware, Eric.
Gosh.
Okay, just making sure.
Don't get in the bucket.
You don't throw a bucket on it, you submerge it.
Yeah, right.
You could do that. Using mineral oil is a thing. I've seen that. Where people,
I've seen that. Yeah,
it's cool, but free.
It's cool, but I'd never subject my own tech to that. It just.
Well, first of all, if you got to fix it, it's just oily. Yeah.
So before we get off on another tangent talking about how we need a tech temperature foundation, let's talk about how DataStax fits into the whole Cassandra ecosystem. You've been a VP there, and you were a developmental evangelist before that. So what is DataStax Mission, and how does it tie into Cassandra?
Well, we started the company around Cassandra, and we are still on that mission to make Cassandra the most used and easy to use database for developers everywhere, period. And it is the database. I keep saying it's the database of the future. Well, it takes continuous work to make that happen. It's not just like, we're code complete, now it's the database of the future. I think that's what happened with COBOL, but I don't think that'll happen again. When we think about our role in the Cassandra ecosystem, we want to be an important part of it if we can, but we are a part of the community. This is a very large community. But the things that we bring to the party are we devote engineering time to it, but we also have things that build out other parts of the ecosystem, like education, certification, and making it easier for enterprises to use Cassandra with our enterprise product, with all the bells and whistles that need to be there for enterprise. And then with our Cassandra as a service, which is Astra, just a click away and you can have some Cassandra running. And, all of these things have the word Cassandra in them, but we're starting to branch out from Cassandra. We're doing Pulsar now, Apache Pulsar. And I think this is where DataStax is going to start, you're going to start seeing more and more about how we're a better database company or a data company for Kubernetes eventually.
And so why Pulsar? And maybe just real quick, explain what Pulsar does.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I've been using Apache Pulsar for, years now. And the whole thing about Apache Pulsar is that it is, well, let me explain what it is first. Apache Pulsar is a streaming technology or a queue, or manages passing messages from point A to point B really well. So Pulsar has done some amazing things in that realm because I think a lot of people are familiar with Kafka. And Kafka has done a great job of normalizing it, making it mainstream. Pulsar was after Kafka and solved some of the bigger scale problems with message passing, especially when it comes to multi-data center. And that's actually how I got involved with it. I just seem to love things that are fully distributed in multi-data center. What can I say? And it's been a technology that has tracked closely with the way Cassandra works. And that's one of the reasons we're involved in it. It scales the same way. Just add more nodes if you need more. It distributes its data from data center to data center, which is, so thinking of globalized data, sure. And I will have to tell you, I'm very interested in non-global data, as in leaving the planet. We can talk about that later if you want.
Sure.
Yeah, let's talk about that. It's complementary because when you're building out applications, you need a complete suite of data services inside of your cloud native application. And it's not just storing data and letting it sit there. And data's got to move around too.
Yeah. And you'd be able to access it.
Yeah. And analyze that data. So that's why we're going there.
That's pretty cool. I haven't done a lot of work with Pulsar, at least not yet. Aside from the scaling, like how does it compare to Kafka? Like, does it use similar language to deal with it, or is it just, or is it a complete departure?
Well, I mean, a lot of these things are similar for a developer. For instance, it has a Kafka API, so that's great. And you may not even know, like we have a Pulsar as a service, Astra Streaming with a Kafka API. If a developer was, working on Kafka, something that was putting something in a producer as a producer or consumer for Kafka, they wouldn't even know the difference. And that's great. Underlying is very different because of the way that it stages and tiers its data. And so that gives you a lot better multi-tenancy story and a lot better scale story than Kafka. And that's actually why why people left Kafka and went to Pulsar, is because they went from second gear to third gear and they're like, uh-oh, what's next?
Yeah, that's always been, I think, the biggest problem with Kafka is the lack of multi-tenancy.
Yeah, in the storage tiering, everything is one price when you store your data, and not all data is created the same.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, some data is still running on spinning Rust.
Exactly, and tiering out the data, finding places to get it in the right place for analytics. It's just a lot of options there.
Working on these technologies, how does DataStax productize this? Are you doing kind of like an upstream first model and packaging what's there? Or are you adding kind of doing like the Red Hat SUSE model? Or are you doing the more like a GitLab model, the open core model, wrapping proprietary stuff around your database?
Yeah, we always want to be downstream from the upstream Cassandra. And it's easy for us to do some things. It's easier to do what we do as a company with engineers that have a certain focus. Like, for instance, if there's a customer story that we're trying to enable, you may have a team of engineers doing some interesting things with that. And then what we wind up doing is coming up with an enhancement to Cassandra. So then our goal is to always take those interesting things we solved and donate them upstream to Cassandra. The process of donating features and code to Cassandra is pretty baked into this process called an Cassandra enhancement process. And so we have several that have been submitted in that case, but we know that we're going to move at a different velocity than a large open source project. So just always have the credo is like when we have something, donate it. And sometimes there's been things that we were going to donate and realized it wasn't a good idea because we were like, after we get through it, we're like, that was a dead end. That didn't work very well. So we were able to spend the time and hit the dead end without having to submit this to the project and come on, let's go hit the dead end together.
Yeah.
I guess it's almost like an open core, but it's just, with an Apache project, feeding upstream to an Apache project is probably the right way to do it.
Yeah, that's the model I'm a huge believer in, is the contribute upstream, because everyone will benefit and you're not the only ones maintaining it. So.
Well, one of the things that we're really involved in right now is making Cassandra more and more cloud native, getting it closer to Kubernetes. Our Astra service runs in Kubernetes. I mean, we run all of it in Kubernetes. So I'm much better SSDs than my little NUC here. But the goal for us is to create a sustainable service, but all the things that we're learning, we want to contribute back up. And that's going to evolve Cassandra over time, because if you think about it, how many people are not going to be running Kubernetes in 5 years? Yeah.
It is now it's the de facto standard for data center operations at this point. Like in terms of orchestration of workloads, like I don't see it going away anytime soon.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like unless something really radical comes in that can do it way better and take the market by storm. But I don't see anything like that right now. At least not yet.
I don't even think anybody's trying.
You know, what convinced me that this is it is watching all the cloud companies just start throwing in the towel like, okay, fine, here's our Kubernetes service. Last reInvent, when Amazon said we have our own version of Kubernetes, I was like, all right, it's game over. Kubernetes wins.
Done.
Yeah. And the Amazon kind of, well, here, it's our version. It's close. They're like, all right, whatever. But
as long as it has the CNCF stamp, Kubernetes certified, that's all that matters. Can I hit the APIs all the same? So
yeah, Helm install, kubectl pod, view pods, all that. I want to see it. Get pod, sorry.
Excellent transition into our next segment, because you happen to serve with the CNCF. On this show, we've only mentioned the Cloud Native Computing Foundation in passing. So what is the foundation and how does it fit into the community?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, well, CNCF is yet another foundation, believe it or not, Aaron.
There's a theme here.
Yeah, that's the F part of CNCF. What's interesting, I think, about CNCF is it started early in this idea of cloud native and like, what is cloud native? And it was when a lot of people that were doing, like trying to reason through what cloud native is. And so the foundation originally started as, a lot of people think is like, oh, it started because of Kubernetes. Yeah, somewhat, but it has blown up into all of these projects. And it's one of the easiest analogies that I have is it's become like the ASF for cloud. The Apache Software Foundation was doing infrastructure like HTTP, Cassandra, Tomcat. You think of all the projects that were in ASF that it was a good home for that. Well, CNCF is a good home for cloud native projects, Kubernetes, Envoy, Istio. Well, no, not Istio. Oh, there's a controversy there. We won't talk about it.
Shots fired.
Shots fired. If you think about all the Prometheus and all the observability and all the different layers that have to go into building a cloud native application, this is their home.
I mean, we've been joking about it quite a bit. There is kind of a foundation problem in the technology world, but I think one of the ones that I respect the most is the CNCF. There's so much process. I love their graduation programs to where that's a quick and easy way for businesses that are looking to build technology to look at a project, to look at a solution and go, okay, the Cloud Native Computing Foundation just promoted this, so they must have a lot of faith in it. So we don't mind staking our multi-million-dollar thing on this project. It's something that I think the open source community should learn from.
Foundations are a really important part of open source because they are the trust model.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been involved in industry groups, quote unquote, before, in the 90s. And it was just a bunch of vendors in a room that were begrudgingly sitting there trying to work on some sort of standard. And what did you get out of it? 2 standards, 3 standards. It was like, it didn't involve any community. And I think that was the sins of the past that we're trying to fix. Those industry organizations that were just industry players, it was an echo chamber. But CNCF includes the end users, and it keeps everyone honest. I've been in TLC meetings where, we're talking about projects, but end users are there too. And they're like, you can't do this, or, this is the wrong direction, or, they put in there, this is something that will make our lives better. Great. This is what we need to hear. And it's the trust level now. If you're in the room where Google Amazon and Microsoft are there as well, and they're agreeing to something with 3 or 4 community members, that's a trust factor. So that's why I believe, at least in this model for today.
So you mentioned TOC. How did you come to serve on the Technical Oversight Committee?
When DataStax joined the CNCF, part of that is they take nominations for Technical Oversight Committee, and it's just getting as many voices in there as possible. It's not like being on the Nobel community committee or anything really, really cool, but it is important, and it's pretty big. There's weekly meetings, and of course, there's a lot of discussion around, like you were talking about, like sandbox and incubating projects. They go from sandbox, incubating, graduated. Just discussions around that, really keeping everybody on track. But as you mentioned, the CNCF has a really great, every bit of their operation is run through Git. So if you have a project there's one form, and then the rest is all Git commits. Yeah. It's like, for people who don't know how to use Git that join in, they're just lost. Yeah. So that's how you know it's nerds.
Exactly. Yeah, indeed. KubeCon's coming up. It might be so far, at least fingers crossed, it'll remain in person. Are you going to participate? As DataStax going to participate? Yeah, anything to look forward to at KubeCon?
Well, yeah, that's the other foundation that I told you I was working on right now is the Data on Kubernetes community right now. And it's not a foundation right now, but this is definitely a subgroup in the cloud native world, and it's not a part of CNCF right now. But we do have a DOK day before KubeCon. It's the day before, and it's sponsored by CNCF. CNCF is very gracious, and they give us so when you sign up for KubeCon, there's a checkbox. I want to go to DOK day as well. But Data on Kubernetes community is this group of people, hopefully mostly SRE engineers, that are like, hey, we want to run Data on Kubernetes and figure it out for the next year and the next year. That's what I'm personally pretty excited about, because we did a DOK day last KubeCon, and it was small. It was a single track. This one is going to be multi-track, and it's just everything from storage to databases to streaming. It's AI, ML. It's just really blowing up, and that's what I'm looking forward to quite a bit.
Who are the participants in it, if you know, like storage and from AI/ML standpoint?
We're trying to build out the community right now. We're actually gaining more sponsors as we speak. So if you're interested, if you're listening and your company does anything with Data on Kubernetes, just shoot me an email, hit me up on Twitter. I would love to connect you with what we're doing. Right now, of course, DataStax is involved. Maya Data with OpenEBS is involved. Portworx is involved. I'm trying to think of what else. CockroachDB is involved. I don't have a comprehensive list right now. Sorry, you caught me.
Okay. No worries. Yeah. I just thought I'd ask. I mean, some people care about things more than others. So,
yeah, we were trying to get more diversity and not just a bunch of database companies.
Yeah.
Like Portworx, for instance, is a great example. They do a lot of different things that enable data workloads.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. In terms of like the topics, I don't know if you have it off the top of your head, like, is there anything you're really like looking forward to seeing in that track?
Yes, actually, there's a couple of things. First of all, some of the things that are happening right now inside DOK are some hard questions around how databases actually work in Kubernetes. We've been doing a lot of work at slapping operators on. Everybody has an operator for a database. Any data product that runs in Kubernetes needs an operator. And this is some stuff that I've been working on, is how do you build a database that is native to Kubernetes, that needs it will never run outside of Kubernetes. That's kind of a radical thought, and I'm actually working on that part of that right now inside the Cassandra world. Like, how do we get Cassandra to only run in Kubernetes? And there are other data companies that are doing the same thing, but that's going to be when it gets real. And that's some of the topics that are going to come up. I think the other thing that's really important right now is getting our storage game right. There's so many things happening with like CSI, Container Storage Initiative. CSI is a fast moving target. It's super important. I mean, before we would just, throw an NFS mount on Kubernetes and call it good.
Yeah,
right. That doesn't work anymore.
No, thank goodness. Thank goodness, though. That was not very cloud native, to put it mildly.
No, it definitely wasn't fast.
No.
And one of the other things that I think is going to be really great for everybody is just the default security that's there. I mean, we've all set up databases and prayed that they didn't get broken into. There's so many different ways to get into a database, but having sane default security, including fully encrypted traffic out of the box, that's just so critical. I mean, think about what that future is like.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. I haven't thought about it. The traffic encrypted out of the box. I haven't thought about that right away. With the ability of just everything SSL in between every node. I didn't even think about that, like native Kubernetes, and from a native Kubernetes standpoint.
Well, MTLS, the standard, the mutual TLS, is such a great, it's just perfect fit for this sort of thing. And when you're building, one of the things that I'm really passionate about right now is helping DBAs make the transition to SRE. Because DBA, that's a very specialized thing and important, but SRE is really the future. And if we're building data on Kubernetes, but like when you think about like what you're building out, when we were doing virtual machines, we were building a self-contained, everything is in one image. And then we moved that over to containers and did it there. Okay, great. So now but Kubernetes has changed that. Like, no, we're no longer building contained operating system and application. Now we're building full data centers, virtual data centers. When you sketch out a deployment, all of the deployment includes the networking, the storage, the ingress, which is of course networking. But now instead of just relying on the security team to handle it or the storage team to handle it, it's on you, pal. And I'll tell you, the last thing I always think about is security. So having mutual, like some sort of MTLS in the game or default security, I think it's going to save our jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, other features like that the storage solutions bring, like immediately, that you don't even have to think about, like encryption at rest, and not just Kubernetes platform specifics. I'm thinking like along the lines of Ceph and Portworx, bringing that in, introducing that into your architectures. Hopefully people are doing that, especially if they have for whatever reason, something public facing on the internet. Hopefully your database isn't too exposed on the internet, but I've seen worse.
It's a great way to make your company get a headline. If you need
global read writes on your database, Brandon. That's the way to go.
Oh yeah.
Just let everybody have access to the database.
Okay, Eric. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm on fire today. I've got all these great ideas.
Yeah, I think you should be a SQLite administrator. You'd be awesome. Or maybe you are.
I'm not sure if I should be offended.
Yeah. Was I offended? Let's just say no. SQLite's one of the most fun fact. SQLite's one of the top databases in the world.
It is.
Yeah, it's always in the top 10.
It's in the back of half the applications I use right now.
Yeah.
Just on my desktop. You don't even realize it's there. I'm like, I went and looked at the code. I'm like, how about that? SQLite.
So because I like you guys, I'm going to give you a secret story. And I won't name names to protect the innocent. They're not that innocent, but I'm going to protect them anyway. There was a major food chain that I was working with on a Cassandra project. And they, in every single store, when you ordered food and it had to do the point of sale and up to the home office, every single store had a box that was running SQLite. That was what they did all the point of sale on. And they wrapped this thing in the most god-awful, ugly PHP. I'm not kidding, PHP. To make sure it was synchronized and valid all the time. And this wasn't a small chain. So they had quite a few.
I did that with this was in the MySQL 4 days with PHP. So I'm not. That was very weird and stupid at the time, especially with MySQL the way it used to be back then when it was a total. I will say it was a dumpster fire back then.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Yay, let's get rid of foreign keys for fun. So.
Well, when did PHP become a system language? That's what I want to know.
Yeah. No, well, that one was a little tough to swallow because PHP on this app was both the front end and the back. So that was a lot of fun to deal with. So, calling Perl too on top of that. Lots of Perl.
Lovely.
DBI, it's good stuff. Yeah. Sorry. You're just making me feel old now. Thanks.
I was not too early in my career.
Yeah, no, we built a lot of .com on Perl and DBI. That's all I got to say.
So, Patrick, what's next? What's next for you, for the CNCF, DataStax, Cassandra, your dealer's choice?
Dealer's choice. Let's see. Well, right now I'm in the middle of writing a book, and hopefully everyone will love it because I want to sound like I know what I'm doing. So I'm writing a book called Managing Cloud Native Data in Kubernetes. That's an O'Reilly book. So that's going to be an early release here in a couple months. If I could just get to my keyboard.
I know how that feels. I have about 8 blog posts for work and for the show that are just sitting there, blank pages right now. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. And then, we just shipped 4.0. So, of course, what is everyone talking about? 5.0 and Cassandra. So, yeah, I would expect to see a lot of changes coming really quickly. A 3-year code freeze builds up a lot of steam. And there's just a lot of changes that are pending that I think are going to be coming pretty rapid fire. And that's great. Some of the largest committers and like the companies that work on Cassandra, have some great ideas of where this is going to go. So stay tuned and get involved in the community. If you're involved in or want to be involved in the cutting edge of distributed databases and probably a database you'll use eventually, join the community. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, I know I'm going to jump in. I used to do lots with MySQL, as I said, Postgres, did some Mongo recently. Cassandra is just one of those ones I just haven't touched yet. It's on my radar. It's been on my radar since at least 2011. But
I'm going to tell you how to get started, Brandon. Brandon, I'm going to use you as the guy. Yeah, I'm going to tell you, and then everyone else has to listen.
All right.
In 2021, because this is when the podcast is going out, right?
Yeah, it's going out. No,
okay, good.
What, a couple weeks?
Okay, good. It's still in 2021. If you want to get involved in Cassandra today, go check out the Kate Sandra project. K8 Sandra. K8Sandra.io. It's how to run Cassandra in Kubernetes. It's a fast-moving project. It's really fun, open source. It's SREs, distributed nerds, all working together to try to make the best, most awesome distributed database in Kubernetes. And it just happens to be Cassandra. So that's a great place to get started today.
Nice.
And we would love your input.
Yeah. Every single time I open up my OpenShift cluster, I see it right there, Cassandra, to install it. Yeah. So
the Cassandra? Yeah. Well, yeah, Cassandra does run an OpenShift, by the way. Yeah.
It's there. It's on my list. It's just finding time.
Is that big eye looking at you?
Yeah, it is.
The big Cassandra eye just staring
at you. It's right there.
It worked.
I've got one more good idea. We need a foundation for nerds that need help managing their learning backlog.
Oh, boy.
So a foundation for support groups for nerds?
Yeah, that would be better. We all just get around and sit around in a circle with our little styrofoam cup of coffee. It's like, hi, my name's Patrick.
Hi, Patrick.
Yeah, so I looked at my Hacker News backlog today. And, I just said, it's okay. And I deleted half of it.
If it makes you feel better, Patrick, I actually went through some of my RSS feeds today and deleted 3 of them that I haven't read an article in a couple of months. It's like, you know what? It's time to go. So I shed a tear.
Good job. This question I want answered. I want to know, when can I get a level 5 operator on Operator Hub so I don't have to touch it?
Level 5. That's called a human. Yeah, right. It'll be right after my Tesla drives me to anywhere I want to go. Yeah, the level 5.
As long as that Tesla is running Cassandra, then we're set.
Yeah, well, yeah. Or if it's 4, yes. If it's 3, maybe not. But yeah, yeah. Level 5 operator. I wonder if we're just going to skip that completely and just say everything's native and we don't need an operator.
Oh, that would be good.
Either that or Skynet.
Yeah, Skynet. Yeah, when the Terminator shows up, oh man, there it is, the level 5 operator.
Well, Patrick, this has been an awesome conversation. I think we spent 30 minutes in the pre-show just chatting and sharing jokes. So very, very thrilled you came on. This was great. We covered a ton of ground. I think our audience will love what you have to say.
Well, I hope so. Yeah, and if you don't, then go read my book.
When that hits release, let us know, and we'll have to bring you back on the show.
Yeah, we could do that. I'll bring my co-author, Jeff, and we could talk about like how we don't get along anymore, probably.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. It could be like you could help us.
I was going to say we could have another sit down, another safe circle, whatever we want to call it.
Saving nerd friendships. Yeah.
One foundation at a time.
Yeah. You can call it, I know what the name of the foundation would be. Get Blame.
The Get Blame Foundation.
I like
done.
it.
With that, just drop your mic.
Yeah.
Well, please don't. That's a nice mic. So
yeah. Well.
Alrighty, Patrick. We will definitely have all of your contact information and the links from today's interview in the show notes. But until then, Patrick, thank you so much, and we'll hope to have you on the show again real soon.
Thanks, fellas. This was a lot of fun. See you soon.
Thank you so much for joining us today. As always, your feedback is welcome. Head on over to sudo.show/discuss. If you'd like more of Brandon and I, you can find it over at sudo.show and on social media at Sudo Show Podcast. You can catch more awesome content over at our network partners, destinationlinux.network. Brandon, anywhere else you'd like to send folks?
You can follow me on Twitter at dbrandonjohnson or on my website, open-tech.net.
And you can follow me at ITGuyEric or on my website, itguyeric.com. Remember, the Sudo Show is your place for all things enterprise open source. Until next time.